Well, noted Washington hater Jeff Schwartz is here in the building. I think it's very clear. I'm not betting against Washington at this point. They've won 10 straight games now by 10 points or less. Like, it seems foolish to do that. They'll be underdogs now for the fourth time in the last 5 games, right? Oregon State, Oregon, and Texas. And they continue
They really closed as an underdog at Oregon. That's right. They did.
They did, yeah. Oh. They closed at Oregon. And we both bet Washington that game because that's silly to us. Obviously, look, their efficiency numbers are sort of nowhere near what we've seen in previous champ. It doesn't mean they can't win this game. But let's review sort of what we saw on Monday, right? So Michigan wins a game where they didn't play all terribly well, right? I mean, McCarthy was a little bit off. I think he's better than people give him credit for, but he didn't play terribly well at moments in that game. The special teams were bad, and they won. Like, they won in playing a game that wasn't their best. On the other hand, Washington guys, Michael Penix has been good this year. He was on a whole nother level against Texas. Like, that was the best he's played all season long, by far, avoiding pressure and making throws down the field. His top 4 wide receiving targets caught 19 of 20 passes. I mean, it was an unbelievable performance. He heat checked the entire game. And if he plays that well against Michigan, Washington's probably going to win the game. But he plays a little bit less, they probably won't. And that being said, guys, Texas had the ball at the 12-yard line with 15 seconds left to win that game. And a halfway decent quarterback puts the ball right on Mitchell on 4th down, and that game's over, and Texas wins. So despite all of that, Washington playing as well as they did, and Michael Penix playing out of his mind, again, the game was close. Every game they play is close. And it's Michigan, the team, to finally take them down. Michigan has many different ways to win, in my opinion. They can run the football. They can play action pass. They can move the pocket. Washington allowed points to Utah this year. They allowed points to Stanford this season. That's why they're dogs again, because defensively, they're not as stout. Again, 31 points. Texas had 2 turnovers, had a bunch of punts, and down. Again, at the end, they had the ball on the 12-yard line to go win that game. So, again, I'm not really betting against Washington at this point because they continue to win these type of games. But their profile seems like a team that will lose to a Michigan in this matchup.
How much does that make up for, like, a perceived talent gap?
Obviously, for Washington, it has, and that's why I'm not betting against Washington this game. I'm not laying either side of this game because Washington continues to prove in these moments that they have whatever it is to win these games. The end of that game was the first time all season that Kalen DeBoer even sniffed like a coaching mistake. Mm-hmm. You know, like he hadn't done that all season long. They've been so well coached, so prepared. They don't turn the ball over. They don't make critical errors. They don't typically have special teams mistakes, even though obviously we saw they muffed that punt. Their kicker makes all the kicks. Like they do everything that's needed to win these games. Kalen DeBoer, you know, he goes for on a 4th down, which I think is fantastic. He's aggressive. He never looks panicked. So yes, they talked about being an underdog to Oregon, underdog to Texas. The one thing that's interesting though is that heading into the Texas game, Michael Penix, and it was very confident. He said before the game, like, this isn't the 49ers defensive line. Right. His comments about Michigan so far are a little bit different. Yeah. You know, they know Michigan's a tougher test in this game, guys. And so, look, it's really it's a matchup of different styles. If Michigan runs the ball 45 times, I think we agree they win this game, right? If they have to get into a shootout, probably not the best game. But I will say, I think we're sleeping on McCarthy a little bit, Sammy. Like, I just think that McCarthy is better than we give him credit for. He's only lost 1 game, and he's played well. Like, he didn't make all the throws against Bama, but when it mattered the most, guys, he made the throws that mattered. So here's a question people on the West Coast are asking about Washington, because obviously we see the line, you see this sort of advanced, you know, data about where they're sort of ranked in the country compared to other teams. If their name was USC instead of Washington, same exact stat profile, same exact way they're playing. Sammy, I'll ask you first because you make these numbers. Like, is this game 3 points, a pick 'em, or is this game changed at all if the name says USC on the front and not Washington? It's funny. I see Michigan fans already in social media being like, well, they can't catch every pass.
Yes, they can.
No, they can. They will. Like that, like 50-50 balls for Washington are 95-5. Their receivers catch everything. So, you know, Michigan's game plan, I think, is going to be, we're going to sit back in zone and we're going to let them get their yards inside the 20, basically, or outside the 20. And when they get in the red zone, we're going to clamp down. The red zone offense for Washington isn't as good as their field offense, but that's mostly because they get a lot of touchdowns on big plays. They're not in the red zone very often. One thing to look for, Dylan Johnson's injury. Now, Ryan Grubb, their offense coordinator, said he's going to play on the radio. And he's been beat up most weeks now for the last 6. Like he was limping against Oregon State, against Washington, Washington State. And if he doesn't play, it's a big deal because after they played Oregon the first time, that's October 14th, The next couple of games, teams went, we're just dropping into zone coverage. And they played decently well relative to the rest of the schedule for Washington. And then Dillon Johnson came along. And when Dillon Johnson's averaging 7 yards a carry, you're not dropping in soft zone anymore. And so if he's not there, their backups are okay. They're not great. I think Michigan just sits back in zone and says, hey, man, we're not letting you beat us deep, which is what Texas did in the second half. In the second half of this game, Washington scored one offensive touchdown with 11 minutes left in the third quarter. No more touchdowns the rest of the game. 3 field goals. So I think Michigan just sits back and says, we're not going to let you beat us deep, and we'll try to clamp down as we get closer to the red zone when there's less space in the field, there's less room to maneuver. You throw the ball outside the numbers now, our safeties are able to get there much easier. And so, again, it's a game where we have contrasting styles, and we'll see which style wins out. But Washington just continues to win these games, which I've rooted against Washington enough now where it's the most frustrating part of watching them play. So 2 things. One is that Penix is very accurate, but one technical thing their wide receivers do really well is they don't put their hands up for the ball until the ball is there. So there was a play at the end, near the end of the Texas game where Rome Odunze caught the ball and the Texas cornerback was still looking back for the ball, and Rome was out of bounds already because as they're running, right, and they just kind of like put their hands out to catch the ball like this because the ball's perfectly thrown. If you put your hands out early, the DB sees that and tries to swat away or put his hand up in the air. So part of it is their wide receivers do a great job of technically catching the football, and then Michael Penix, again, puts the ball on target. And so I'm curious to see, obviously, if he plays as well as he did on Monday, they're winning the championship. It just is what it is. But if he plays a little bit less, if they can force him into, by the way, that was the best game he had played all season under pressure. He had not looked that good all season under pressure, guys. He just was incredible. He was a heat check game. He was marvelous. He played great. Texas pressured him, and Michigan's going to have to pressure him. Different than Alabama. Alabama had a bunch of missed assignments, and Milroe couldn't check out of nothing. He didn't really understand what was coming. Sometimes empty. So it's going to be a fun game. It's just 2 heavyweight teams, and they're both really good. And so I'm excited to watch. Getting over 30.5 points here, Bear, in this game. The narrative that J.J. McCarthy isn't good came out of the Alabama game. He didn't have his best game. He also made some really good throws. And so far this year, they've played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams has Michigan played that have an SP plus defense better than Washington. Washington's 44th, okay? They've averaged 32.3 points per game. Washington allowed 28 points in the first half to Bryson Barnes in Utah, 33 points to Stanford, 31 to Texas, and Texas had opportunity to score more points there, right? Over 30, twice to Oregon. They allow a ton of points, Bear. It's just what their defense is. They play a soft defense once they get up in games. So I think Michigan runs the ball. They put up touchdowns. And I think even this is one of those where Michigan's driving down the end of the game. I'm rooting for them to get from 24 to 31. Look at that last touchdown of the game. So I like Michigan here over 30.5. I'm just not taking Michigan minus 4.5 with Washington's. I can't do it.
Yeah, I'm like Sammy, we were talking about on the group chat. I'm going to wait it out and see maybe this.
It's not getting. I don't think it's getting down.
I don't think it's coming down to 4.
Yeah, same as Alabama, Michigan, right? The public's all in Alabama, and Michigan number did not move. I feel like in this situation, the sharps are on Michigan because the number in this game, neutral field. I saw SP Plus had it 12. Had 12 on a neutral field.
Yeah, and you think that when you were saying that, it popped into my head. In these title games, typically it is public or people will just take the dog on the money line.
Yes, which
may give a reduced price on the favorite on the money line, or and you're laying the points with the favorite, or you're just taking the dog on the money line. I think that's kind of how it breaks down.